Okay.
Should I put on our slideshow? Covering our faces or just our faces? Let's just start our
Well,
faces.
just put our faces up.
Yeah, and it's
And
recording.
are you sharing screens with me so I can see it?
No, and I'm not sure it's a good idea.
Well, how am I going to see what's up?
Ah, okay. Let's see if we can do that.
Because otherwise, I have no idea what's going on.
Okay. Welcome to the live stream. All right. Uh, let's see. Can you hear us, folks? All right. Let's just send that out and see.
I can make this bigger.
There we go.
So,
All right. There we go. Well,
I can make it a little bit bigger. Okay, good.
I believe that we are currently live streaming. It would be nice to know if anyone is out there who can hear us and can confirm to us that we are in fact live streaming. Finish, record. It looks like it's happening, but I'm not sure.
Well, this is our very first YouTube live stream. So we have a lot to learn, and I hope that we'll be able to give folks a lot that they can learn from in exchange.
Right, let's give people a minute or two to actually get here with us.
Is
Uh,
there a count of people who are with us?
there should be, there's a 0 there right now. Let me, it says that we're started. There's a time counter, I believe. Let me see if there's a time counter. No. I'm going to actually open up our YouTube channel. And we're here. You can see that, but our guest can't.
I can. I can.
All right, and I need live streaming. So we are live. So I know why. We have to have the word live. /live. Now let's see if that brings us to a live stream. Maybe we'll see ourselves.
That's always a pleasure, is it not?
Indeed, indeed. It says it's connecting. Now, I don't know if the same connection can do both. There'll probably be a lag and all sorts of odd things. Live broadcasts, 11 watching. I see our
Well,
face
good.
live now. If I click on it, will I actually get a live stream? Ooh, I can see myself, maybe. Well, here we are, folks, in the second decade of the 21st century already. I see Dr. Rima drinking some coffee. Our YouTube channel. All right, then I'm going to put this on.
My suggestion is now that we know that that's on, that we click that off to save bandwidth because we will need it.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will
Okay.
get rid of that. All right. Yeah, it says 10 people are watching us, and there are people saying hello. I don't know, Dr. Rima,
Hello?
if you can see
I
the chat.
I
You
can
can
see
see it,
it,
but
but
you
I
can't
cannot
read
read it
All
because
right.
I'm seeing it through your screen and it's too small.
So Bob Goodman is here. Hello, Dr. Bob. Snoopy Beagle is here. Hi, Snoopy. Nephil Angel is here. So we have some folks here, and we are going to start momentarily
Good.
having a discussion of masking. We are indeed the Unmasked Crusaders. Uh, we are at least 6 feet from any other human being at the moment. In fact, Rima and I are about 1,500 miles apart, I guess. So
We are.
there we are. So what is safe and what is not? We have some interesting slides for you. We have an opportunity to talk about some of the issues that a lot of people are facing. Do masks do anything? Do they help a little bit? Do they help a lot? We're going to explore those ideas. We have a little list that we're working from of things we want to cover with you tonight, and we'll also be happy to answer questions. So I hear the word no. Audio is very low. Turn up your audio. I think that we have ours as high as it's going to go. I mean, I can bring it up a little bit here. and I can bring it up a little bit here. That may be a little better. Let me know if you have anything going on. It's all right. Loading is slow, predictably, right? Yeah, we're dealing. Well, remember, folks, there will be a recording of this on YouTube, so we will have a chance to inspect it later at higher audio, perhaps. We're just learning how to use Prism Live Studio. It's allowing us to have Dr. Rima live and myself, Ralph Fusatola, live. We also have several items we want to show you. I believe, Dr. Rima, you may even have a video you want to show people. And if that's
I
the
do.
case, yeah, then I have to figure out how to set a video up.
Okay.
It should be an interesting thing to do. There is the first video, which you have here, and I'm going to see what I can do about that.
Okay.
Take it.
Before we begin, I thought maybe you all know that you're watching the Natural Solutions Foundation presentation on the science and medical reality, as well as the political reality and the social reality of masking. There's a great deal of misinformation, and the basis for we have a video screen kind of in front of me. Is that supposed to be there? Are other people seeing
that? No one
that?
can see that, Dr. Rima.
Oh, okay. So it's a ghost screen.
Right, it's the video
okay.
that you want to show. So when you're ready, we'll see if it
good.
works.
Okay, so it's set up to go. All right. Let's start with the fact that it's very important to remember that there is a difference in the sizes of bacterial particles and viral particles. Ralph, do you have the slide
Yes, I
of
do.
the size of a virus that we're talking about?
And I can find that for you by going. How exciting this is! We have all these wonderful things here. There are a number of slides that I have, Dr. Rima, of yours, and the viral image is one of them.
It's the
there it is.
size comparison.
Yep.
No, that's the wrong slide. It's there.
Coronavirus,
it is.
aerosol drop, and hair.
I hope you can see that the virus we're talking about is about 120 nanometers. Aerosol particles, and this will be important later as we talk, are between 5 and about 40 nanometers. And you can see for comparison on the right side the diameter of a human hair. Now, bacteria are significantly larger than either the virus that we're talking about or the aerosol particle. Thank you. That slide is, we don't need it now. If we're talking about a bacterial disease and we put something over our face to block the transmission of it, either out or in, then we will be successful. If we were talking about a bacterium, masking would be a pretty good idea if the mask material were appropriate, if the seal around the side of the face were good, if the seal over the nose were good, and if the seal under the mouth were good. But if it were just a piece of paper or a piece of dish towel or a piece of bandana or several folded layers of t-shirt or a chiffon scarf with sequins and lace, it would not be effective even in a bacterial contamination. The science in terms of viral contamination is we don't need that slide now.
Yet? Okay.
Very clear, but we do need that slide. Can you zoom in on that so that people can see that slide in detail, Ralph? Can you make it larger?
Yep, I'm making it larger.
This is the laboratory of a world-famous scientist, Martin Krieger, in Germany. And he studies aerosol dispersion and viral dispersion. Please show the masks if you can show the size of their faces.
I can. They're all circled in red. Yeah.
These are, Dr. Krieger is at the center of the slide in a white shirt. Next to him is an assistant in a blue shirt and another assistant in a white blouse. And you will notice that all three of them are wearing masks incorrectly. I have circled the areas that show you that these masks, while theater, have absolutely no value in reducing the spread and transmission of viral disease. And Dr. Krieger, a world famous expert, as I said, himself has said, nope, masks reduce the spread of viral aerosols and particles by maybe up to 2 to 10%, not more than that. And I'm going to show you that in detail. Then whether we're talking about surgical masks like these, or whether we're talking about, well, let's call them common fabric masks, they are beyond useless. They're actually hurtful. Now, can you show us that blue slide of some of the hazards of wearing a mask, Ralph?
I can do that, and that is.
Now, while Ralph is getting that, I want to make it clear that the propaganda value of masks is enormous. The social control value of masks is enormous. The scientific value of masks is dismal. Before we actually dive into the medicine science, and you don't need a science background to understand what I'm going to say, it is so painfully evident that only a journalist or a politician could possibly miss it. Well, I can, while you're looking for it, I can go to a document from which I can read it. What's the problem with wearing a mask? Yes. No, that's not it. It's a little further down. What's the problem with wearing a mask? I get emails there, that's it, that say things like, well, how can it possibly hurt? Why don't you just wear a mask and basically shut up because other people feel better? No, go back to the blue one, please. No, as a matter of fact, that's not true. Wearing a mask decreases oxygen. Even a poorly fitting mask like the ones that we saw the three, quote, aerosol experts, end quote, wearing, decreases the level of oxygen. OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, says that you have to have at least 19.5% oxygen coming into your mouth and your nose if you're wearing a mask or a respirator or whatever. Even a simple surgical mask or a single layer bandana will decrease the oxygen levels to 17% or less. And what that means is that the amount of oxygen in your blood, the saturation level of your blood goes down and your blood desaturates in terms of the amount of oxygen that it's carrying. That condition is called hypoxia. When you have decreased oxygen, you have increased carbon dioxide. That's a condition called hypercapnia. Hypoxia and hypercapnia can increase blood pressure, increase your heart rate, increase the stress that your body is under, increase your neurological vulnerability. So there you are pushing a shopping cart around, wearing a face mask in a state of hypoxia and hypercapnia, and your heart has to work much harder because it has less blood carrying oxygen, less oxygen carrying blood moving around your body. And what happens to you? Well, anything can happen to you. And if you're taken to a hospital in the current madness, you will be determined to, quote, have COVID, which we'll get to in a moment, as probably not the case. Any kind of stress, including emotional stress, including the anxiety of seeing other people masked, including the anxiety of wearing a mask, can increase your fight or flight response, which increases cortisol, which increases the entire stress response, which decreases blood flow to your organs except for your brain and your muscles, which decreases your immune response. A moment of anger, fear, or worry, according to the people who study psychoneuroimmunology, which is a very important area of study, a moment of stress, anxiety, or anger can decrease your immune competence for 6 full hours. That's one moment. Continued fear, anxiety, depression, emotional stress, social isolation can decrease your immune system on a chronic basis. And the only bulwark that you have against getting any kind of illness, whether it's a chronic degenerative disease, whether it's a viral disease, a bacterial disease, a parasitic disease, the only defense that you have is your immune system. Happily, your immune system has a lot of pieces and parts, but if you're constantly lowering your immune system with lack of vitamin D, sunshine, exercise, air, lack of social connection, people who are isolated die of all causes more than people who are in strong social connections. We need to be in each other's energy fields. We need to touch and hug each other. We need to be supported by each other. We need to be held. Children need to see faces. Children need to be held, not sitting in cubes with a bucket of
can
toys.
I ask you to address that more directly? A week or so ago, Dr. Rima and I appeared on a live stream program in Texas, and Dr. Rima spent some time discussing, as a child psychiatrist, what the masks do to children. It is so important that we hear this that I'd really appreciate it if you could focus in for a few moments on what happens when children are required to wear masks for many hours a day in school and etc.
First of all, what happens to the child who's wearing the mask is hypoxia and a sense of anxiety. The only reason to wear a mask is because there's danger. And so we're telling our children that they're in danger. The trauma that was induced in my generation, in your generation, Ralph, which is the same generation, by having to hide under our desks in preparation for an atomic bomb blast, that trauma has marked and damaged every single one of us. This is the same thing, but it's visually replicated. It's retold to the child, you're in danger, you're in danger, you're in danger. So there's this constant training for anxiety, for fear, for social control. I have to look down, I have to do what you say. But children need faces. They need to see faces. Infant development is a subject that people have been studying for well over 100 years. And we know that gazing at a human face changes the brain and the biology and the entire lifelong stress receptor response of children. Babies need to see faces. When children who are autistic miss social signals and don't understand people's faces, that's a huge social deficit. What do you think we're training children not to see and not to understand?
We're teaching them
faces.
To be autistic? Is that what it really
We're
is?
teaching them to be damaged, what the damage looks like on a large scale. Oh, plus all the vaccines. So yeah, we're teaching them to be autistic. We're teaching them to be isolated.
What happens
Children
to the brain when there's oxygen
let me finish, Ralph.
Yeah.
Children must learn social connection or they're not fully human. What is it like for a preschooler, for a kindergartner, for a first, second, third grader to not be able to touch and play and see and roll together and finger paint together and share and hug and love? What is that like? That is like building a generation of zombies. However you choose to define zombie, it is beings that are not well connected. Do you want a society like that? Do you want that for your children? Well, maybe if masks really helped and they prevented us from getting this, by the way, not so terrible disease, maybe you would say it would be worth it. Masks don't do the job, as I'm going to tell you in a moment. How can she say it's a not so terrible disease? We have 200,000 deaths. Let's talk about testing, and then I'll get to masks. I have a quote that I would like to share with you about testing. I have so much information. Even when a PCR, that's the gold standard, the genetic test, even when a PCR test is positive, even if it's not a false positive, and there are vast numbers of false positives, this is from a scientific study. This is from the CDC website. The presence of a positive test is not equivalent to the disease. Quote, one must be cautious in imputing the findings with one respiratory virus to another respiratory virus, as each virus has its own infectious inoculum and distinct aerosolization characteristics. Studies that rely on PCR to detect the presence of viral RNA, listen up, may not represent viable virus in significant amounts to produce infection. So it's measuring many coronaviruses, and you have antibodies and mRNA and DNA from many viruses that you've encountered in your life. And it doesn't mean that any one of them can produce an infection. So the testing, all of it, the antibody testing, the quick testing, the PCR testing, has pretty much nothing to do with disease status. But those numbers, the 200,000 deaths, represent 200,000 guesses. As people say, well, he's dead. Must have been COVID. Well, he died in a car crash, but, we'll call it a COVID death. We know that. That's been revealed. Doctors have been instructed to call everything a COVID death. The tests mean nothing.
But we will know, Dr. Rima, at some point in the next number of months, whether or not the year 2020 saw an increase in actual overall deaths or not. And we also know from preliminary information that the number of children dying of SIDS, so-called sudden infant death syndrome, which means we don't know how it happened, the number of children that normally, and it's a terrible, horrific normal, 700 children a week in the United States, on and off, die of SIDS every day, every year. Apparently that number went down to about 500 a week after the lockdown began and children stopped seeing their physicians for their well baby visits and their vaccines.
And their vaccinations, exactly. Most SIDS deaths, I believe, are in fact vaccine related. And we know the mechanism from Dr. Michael Innes in Australia. Now, before we actually talk about the masks themselves, we have to talk about social distancing. And you have to know that there has never, ever, ever been any validation of the concept of social distancing. In fact, we know that the aerosols through which viruses like influenza and COVID viruses, SARS and COVID-19 and regular colds are spread, actually increase with the distance from the patient. We know that the aerosols linger in the air for dozens of hours. We know that they travel significant distances. We know that samples, for instance, in isolation rooms, 6 feet from each of 2 patients, there were samples positive, more than 6 feet. There were samples positive for the viral RNA, as there were in air samples placed outside the patient's room, in the hallways, and in the staff rooms. There's no way that these procedures are stopping the aerosolization. By the way, the highest airborne RNA concentrations were recorded by personal samplers when a patient was receiving oxygen through a nasal cannula. Speaking, breathing, singing, coughing, being alive spreads aerosols. In Hong Kong, looking at the SARS-CoV-1 virus, which is in terms of weight and dispersal identical to the COVID-19 virus. In an outbreak in Hong Kong in the early 2000s, they studied the fact that people who lived on higher floors of high-rise buildings were more likely to get SARS than people who lived on ground floors. In that study, they looked at airflow and they said that living on the higher levels significantly increased the risk of infection because of the pattern of a rising plume of warm air. That's physics. And that warm air was contaminated because people were breathing on the lower floors. Droplet spread might be reduced by mask use, but aerosol spread is not. And this virus, like other viruses of its size, including influenza, spreads by aerosol dispersal. And it is important to note that people vary in the degree to which they produce bioaerosols just by breathing. Some people have an efficiency of transmission that's higher than others. And bioaerosols spread by exhalation and normal speech. But it's important to know that no respiratory virus, none, is exactly characterized as to what proportion of infections are due to air droplets, aerosol, or fomite transmission, which means touching something that's contaminated and stirring it up again. And many individual factors and situations contribute to the importance of what's going to infect you or not infect you. Your only barrier is your immune system. While the current SARS-CoV-2 specific research is limited, all of the studies that are real studies are consistent with the fact that aerosolization of the virus from normal breathing is the vector of transmission. Now, what about these masks? So if you look at scarves, bandanas, and other face coverings, you're hearing things like, well, a study in the New England Journal of Medicine said that they provide coverage, they provide protection. No, the study in the New England Journal of Medicine said these face coverings may provide marginal protection against nanoparticles. Now, Ralph, can you show us our first slide?
Yes, I'm seeing if I find the right
You
one.
anticipated
this is
my
cloth mask slide.
Yes, this is the cloth mask slide. And they took regular masks. Oh, by the way, on the box of surgical masks used in hospitals, you will see that it says, this is not intended for protection against the COVID virus. It says that on the boxes of every single mask sold in the United States and, to my knowledge, in Europe and China as well. So if it says it's not intended for protection, only the government, which of course is here to help us, could create the delusion that it is going to prevent the spread of the COVID virus. Okay, so if you look at cloth masks, now way down at the bottom, you will see a tiny little blip that says N95. That is the amount of penetration outside the mask that the mask, the N95 respirator, allows through itself. Now, CDC specifically says that N95 respirators are not to be used to either prevent getting COVID or spreading COVID, because there are major health hazards with using those things over more than a couple of hours, major health hazards. So now we're looking at bandanas, we're looking at cloth masks, and we're looking at a fleece mask sold for, a neck gaiter sold for masking protection. The higher the line, the more penetration of the aerosol into the environment. In other words, the less use they have. This is cloth mask. The N95 lets very little out. the cloth mask lets virtually all of the aerosol particles, presumably containing the virus, out. Next slide.
Indeed. This one gives us a sweatshirt and a t-shirt.
Sweatshirt and t-shirt masks, which had been advised, God help us, by the Surgeon General of the United States. There is a shocking, shameful, terrifying video of the beautifully uniformed Surgeon General of the United States making a mask out of a t-shirt. He might just as well be making an Easter basket out of reeds and stuffing candy in it for all its health protection. So you see the N95 release of the aerosol is way down here at the bottom. And then the sweatshirt over your face allows pretty much all of the aerosol out. And the t-shirt over your face allows all of the aerosol out. May I have the next one?
Yes, indeed.
And this is what your government and mine, if you're in the United States or most other countries in the world, is recommending that you do for protection. Again, I mean, really? Maybe they should just send out a bucket of sand to every American and let us stick our heads in it. Okay, now
maybe
you can
we all
also
need to wear burqas. Anyway.
Well, then you'd also get tuberculosis. Then now look at the towel over your mouth. And look at the scarf over your mouth. And way down at the bottom on the right is the N95 respirator and the amount of aerosol that it lets out. And remember, N95 respirators are specifically not recommended for use in the COVID situation by the CDC. So we have a huge amount of aerosol being released. And by the way, if it goes out, it can come in. So it's filtering not much of anything. And the scarf is, you know, absolutely beyond useless. Next slide.
Oh,
okay.
Masks.
Now, these are interesting. Now we go back to the particle diameter. As you go from the left side where it says 0 to the right side where it says 1,000, you get to nanometers. So where is the COVID virus? I've drawn a red line. I hope you can see it. And I've put a circle through, or an oval actually, where the data pertains to the COVID virus, which is 120 nanometers. And you will notice that as the diameter reaches 120 nanometers, the amount of non-filtration, non-protection that you get is astonishingly high. That's where the circle is. And you can see the percentage of dispersal. In other words, the percentage that's allowed out through the mask or allowed in through the mask on the right-hand side. So for the cloth mask, or for these first masks, you can see that the amount of protection is pretty much insignificant. You're looking at between about 78 and 95 or 95% lack of protection. For the next set of masks, you see that you're at pretty much 100% lack of protection for the COVID diameter particle. The next slide, please.
All right, let me see if we get that positioned better.
Now, if you are looking for protection from a t-shirt, well, here's 100, and here's what isn't protected. And if you're looking for protection from a towel, it's pretty much the same curve. And a sweatshirt, pretty much the same curve. And these are at different speeds. So the first one is natural speech, and the second is a cough, which moves the air faster. So whether you're looking at speech or whether you're looking at cough, whether you're looking at a t-shirt or a towel or a sweatshirt or a fleece mask, what you're looking at is theater, political theater. You say, but what about, thank you, Ralph, that's good.
Okay.
And what about surgical masks, like the ones that the aerosol experts were wearing? Well, I will read you the quote. I hope I can find it.
Was this the CDC?
No, these are scientific papers, and in the ebook that you'll receive, all of this is heavily referenced, and you will find the references that you can go to for yourself. Now, these are so-called good face masks, right? But once viral particle size is reached, protection is meaningless from these common material face masks. Then I will, face seal leakage further decreases the results that you saw. What you saw was with good fit. So what about surgical masks? This is a quotation from from the Federal Drug Agency, FDA, cleared surgical masks. And it says, and I quote, "The filtration efficiency of improvised fabric materials," that's what we've just been talking about, "is you ready? Put your seatbelts on, is comparable to some commonly used FDA cleared surgical masks and unapproved dust masks." You know, the kind you buy at Home Depot or Lowe's and just stick over your face because why not? "The filtration efficiency of improvised fabric materials is comparable to some commonly used FDA cleared surgical masks and unapproved dust masks." Did you get that? 2 of the 5 surgical masks showed up to 89% penetration levels. That's the dispersal, the lack of filtration. And the 3 dust mask models had the same, up to 89% for these same aerosols. Thus, the penetration results obtained in the study indicated that the filtration performance of fabric materials is similar in some aspects to surgical masks to reduce the transmission of infectious disease. But you keep hearing, and I quote, "There is no doubt." Well, yeah, there's a lot of doubt. "There is no doubt that universal mask wearing slows the spread of the coronavirus," says the author. "My colleagues and I believe that evidence from laboratory experiments," let me add, the laboratory experiments are 2, in which they took hamsters, who do not get coronavirus the way we do, by the way. They took hamsters and they put them in cages, which they covered with face mask materials. And they said, well, the ones that were inside the cages that were covered didn't get as sick. So this is the studies they're referring to. "My colleagues and I believe that evidence from laboratory experiments, case studies like the cruise ship and food processing plant outbreaks, and long-known biological principles," in other words, everybody knows, "makes a strong case that masks protect the wearer too." And then they say, audaciously, "The goal of any tool to fight this pandemic," ta-da, hear the drums rolling and the bugles playing, "is to slow the spread of the virus and save lives. Universal masking, ta-da-da, will do both. This is without a shred of scientific evidence." I will point out to you that on several cruise ships where they handed out masks, the rate of asymptomatic passengers ranged from 85% to 98%. That is to say, most people didn't get sick. Most people didn't even test positive. But the masks, we know from what I've been telling you, didn't have anything to do with it. And I just will point out that CDC recommendations say explicitly masks with exhalation valves or vents, like the N95 mask, should not, and the CDC capitalized the word not, should not be worn to help prevent the person wearing the mask from spreading COVID-19 to others. Oops. So, if cloth masks don't work, if surgical masks don't work, and if they actually can increase the chance of taking a droplet, splitting it into tiny parts, turning it into an aerosol, and making it more infective as the air goes out and more infective as the air goes in, and if the studies show that the coronavirus can remain infective on the outer and inner surfaces of these masks for up to 7 days. What exactly are we doing with masks? And is there anything like a good cloth mask? Well, laboratory experiments, as I have told you, show that good cloth masks, even ones with no gaps around the face, don't do anything. They are thought to perhaps block up to 80% of viral particles. There is no evidence to support that thought. I would call it a delusion. Now, if you shouldn't wear a mask because it reduces oxygen, if you shouldn't wear a mask because it increases CO2, if you shouldn't wear a mask because it increases the damage to your immune system, and if you don't want to wear a mask because you know all this stuff, what can you do? Because there are signs on stores that say you must wear a mask. There are signs, the airplanes are requiring you to wear a mask, etc., etc., etc. Well, let me give you a hint. I do not wear a mask. Ever. Ever. I do not wear a mask. And yes, I go to Costco, and yes, I go here, and yes, I go there. And if you follow my adventures in masking on opensourcetruth.com, you'll see that when somebody challenges me, I take very direct action. But there are specific things that you can do to make sure that you do not have to either engage in this political control theater, social conditioning theater, and harmful physiological suppression theater. Ralph, could you talk to us about the law?
That is exactly what I want to start with. The Americans with Disabilities Act explicitly mentions breathing as one of the conditions for which people may be disabled. And within the context of the ADA, and remember, ADA does not require you to have a doctor's letter saying that you're disabled. It only requires that you have physiological, mental, or emotional responses that are not effective for your health. You can refuse to mask, and no one can ask. Don't mask. Don't ask. Very important. The ABA, and I show you one of our little advanced sanitary masking directive cards, which we make available so that you can explain to people why you have the right not to be masked. And I'm going to give you a better shot of that on one of my slides. We will do that. But the law is clear. You do not have to. You do not have to do it. There we go. And we are law-abiding folks here. We want to obey the law, and we understand what we have to do in order to obey the law. And in the case of the masking, it is the Americans with Disabilities Act. Of course, on your screen you see two cards, the gold card and the silver card. And of course, the reality is that your purchase of these cards helps support Natural Solutions. And that's why we do it. We do it to educate the public. We do it to give you an opportunity to have in your hand something that you can use to read from, to quote people the law from, and to assert your rights from. I can tell you one thing for absolute certain. If you do not assert your right to be mask-free, your right is deemed waived. If you do not, with the gold card, assert your right to be vaccine-free, your informed consent right is deemed to be waived. The law
I
allows
want to,
us.
emphasize something that you've said from the medical point of view,
Yes,
Ralph.
please.
Under the Americans with Disability Act, and every state in the union must comply with the Americans with Disability Act. So if the governor of your state has issued an edict or a directive that says you must mask and so on and so on, it also says unless you have a unless you have a reason that masking would be detrimental to your health, or
Right.
language to that
Every one
effect.
of those
And
orders
that
includes
reason
that.
can, just one second, Rob.
Right.
That reason can be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be none of the above. Under the Americans with Disability Act and its sister provisions in your local, state, and regional regulatory systems, if you say, I have a condition that would be undermined by masking, you are now legally permitted without any further question to not wear a mask in a situation where you're otherwise told that you must mask. And there is a link there, yes. On the opensourcetruth.com page, you will find, oh, that's very important. On the opensourcetruth.com page, you will find a series of articles about what people have said when I have said, no, I choose not to mask because it would undermine my health. And for instance, the written retraction of any restriction to my or your entering Office Depot stores without a mask, once you say, I have a health condition that would be undermined by masking. They may not put that on the door. It may not say, unless you have a health condition that would be undermined by masking. But that is the law. And it is up to you, as Ralph has said, to assert your rights. Every time you or Ralph or I assert our right, we make that right stronger for ourselves, and we make that right stronger for every single other person. Because if nobody's ever heard of it, nobody's going to pay attention to it. If there are millions of us saying, I'm sorry, I have the right not to mask and I choose not to, and my child chooses not to. Thank you. Have a nice day. Excuse me, please. Every time that happens, we strengthen our freedom.
Exactly. The law is clear, both on the federal and state level. Even the governor's emergency proclamations include the language, and you just need to be willing to assert your rights. Frankly, if you don't, then those people out there who are busybodies and the school crossing guard mentality, as it were, will try to get you to go along. And of course, it's always easy to go along, but it may not be very good for your own health, and it may not be good for your children's health. And
It certainly is not good for your health. And it's not good if you have children or grandchildren and you're teaching them to be terrified cattle. Is that really the message you want to give them? Is that really what you hope they'll be? Because that's what these masks are teaching. They're teaching, I am afraid, I must keep my eyes down, I have no voice.
Exactly. The Supreme Court told us in an important case just really a few years ago, 7 years ago, talked to us about some of these issues. It's a case called Missouri versus McNeely, and it's a case about taking a blood sample from someone, but it applies to putting a vaccine into someone's body or covering their face with a mask. And the Supreme Court said, we have never retreated from our commitment to the proposition that you have an enforceable privacy interest, as they always say. They don't use the word rights anymore. We've got to change that. You have a right to prevent an agent of the government from piercing the skin in the case of the blood test, or in the case of the vaccine, or covering the mouth in the case of the mask. It's very clear that our personal privacy rights, our liberty are at stake here, that maybe masking is slightly less invasive than sticking a toxin-laden vaccine into your body or drawing blood out of your body. But nonetheless, it is on that slippery slope. And if you expect to have any control over your own body and the lives of your family members, your children, then you have to start asserting your rights now. We can't wait until the emergency is over and they allow us to start to go about our business the way we used to go about it. We have to start asserting those rights now, or we're not going to ever get back to the point where we will be allowed to exercise our natural liberty.
I want to make an additional point, and I agree, of course, with everything that you're saying, Ralph. Absolutely everything. Um, who shouldn't wear a mask? Now, most people say, well, it really is okay for most people to wear masks. Even the FDA says people without health problems can wear a mask. So let's look at this. According to the official statistics, these come from the CDC. 121.5 million people in the United States have heart disease. 24.9 million people have asthma. 17 million people have cancer. 16 million people have been diagnosed with COPD, congestive output pulmonary disorder. And there are millions more who have who have not been diagnosed with COPD, but have it, according to them. 500,000 people have bronchiectasis. 11.2 million people have emphysema. 30,000 people are living with cystic fibrosis, and 200,000 people have interstitial lung disease, many of them from radiation for cancer. So if you add that up, that's a lot of people. It comes out to 191.3 million Americans who fall into the categories that CDC says should not mask. And if you do the math, that's 58% of the American population. 58% of the US population is ill with officially diagnosed diseases that preclude masking. And yet the propaganda says, oh, healthy people can mask. There are no problems. Really? Hypoxia? Really? Hypercapnia? Really? Cardiovascular disease? Immunological suppression? What a good idea. I guess they can mask if you don't care that they stay healthy. If your interest is that they don't stay healthy or even die, masking's great. What a good idea.
Who needs oxygen, Dr. Rima? Who needs oxygen? Just every one of us.
Right.
Now, Dr. Rima, we're coming up to the top of our hour, and I've noticed that a number of good folks have been putting comments and questions on the wall here. So perhaps I can go over a couple with you, and maybe we'll get some answers. Any questions, people? Please put them out here, and we'll.
Let me remind everybody, while Ralph is marshaling the questions, that everybody who has signed up for today and who is here will receive a free ebook with the references and the information that I'm talking about and more. And we hope that not only will you get yourself an advance directive card for sanitary masking and vaccine exemptions, which you have, but that you will share this information as widely as you can. This is a matter of public urgency. We all need to know, and we all need to act.
Exactly. And that's why, folks, we tried this, our first attempt at live streaming in a couple of years, and we're learning how to use it. I see there are some points here from people, buffering issues, sound cutting out. This video will be on YouTube, and we will put the link on an article on open source truth.
Excuse me, this video will be on YouTube until YouTube takes it off. We're going to make backups, of course, because YouTube has said that anything that contradicts the World Health Organization pronouncements will be forbidden by them, which is pretty horrendous given what the World Health Organization is. So at least for now.
Right. And we will put it up elsewhere, and there will be links put on opensourcetruth.com Remember, opensourcetruth.com, and I'll put that up. But let me read, Dr. Rima, one message. Dr. Rima, I represent a number of folks here in Perth, Australia. We intend to arm ourselves with the vaccine directive cards, but are getting contradictory information concerning their validity.
Yes. Okay. Yes, a lot of people don't want you to know that you have the right under the right of informed consent, which is guaranteed to you in Australia or any other country that has ratified the Geneva Conventions, and virtually every country in the world has. I don't know whether Bhutan has or Vanuatu, but every other country has. You have the right to say no to any medical procedure unless you are specifically required to take it through the intercession of a judge or some other legal method that is specific to you. And even then, you have rights to fight that. Of course, they don't want you to know about it, and many people don't know that fact. So they'll tell you, oh no, no such right exists. Read the Constitution of Australia, and you will see that you, unlike the people in the United States, have an explicit provision giving you that right. Now, if you don't have a legally correct assertion of that right, that's as good as not having asserted it at all. And we believe that the Advanced Vaccine Directive card, the gold card, hold it up, Ralph, the gold card is that legally correct assertion under the Geneva Convention. Now, let me remind you that when a country ratifies an international treaty, not signs it, that means nothing, but ratifies it, the law of the treaty becomes the law of the country. And the Geneva Convention's law, which has been codified as the Nuremberg Convention, is your law because your country ratified the Geneva Convention. It's our law too. The silver card is based solely on the Americans with Disabilities Act information. You have the same law, but it has a different name, and you have to assert it differently. So if you're getting contradictory information, it's because you're either talking to people who don't know the right information or don't want to tell you the right information. We are giving you the right factual information. You have the right of informed consent, and we believe that the gold card asserts it for all Geneva Convention countries.
Very good, Dr. Rima. More comments. Let's see. No one is getting your audio or video without buffering, blank interruptions. You need to use a faster uplink. Thank you for that thought, folks. We will be looking into faster uplinks for future live streams. Very good. Thumbs up. All right, please, everyone. Thank you. Yes, please. We love your thumbs up, telling everyone at YouTube that you like us. When I remove, all right. When I removed my flash drive and closed out all the other open sites on my menu, the video has no buffering. Now it's working perfectly. Thank you, Sharon. That's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Probably I should make sure that I clean everything off my screen before live streaming, too. That probably would help a lot. All right. Very good. Very good. Fear is the real pandemic. Thank you, Meditation Master. All right.
I would, if I may, Meditation Master, I would say something else.
Go ahead.
Fear is the real result of the real problem. The real problem is social conditioning to fear, social conditioning to obey, social conditioning to not examine the data. And then fear is easily induced. And fear indeed turns off the immune system, turns off your left hemisphere, turns off your ability to process with your highest possible facilities, turns off your access to the wider cosmos and the information available there. But fear is a product of the social conditioning that tells you that you're in danger and we will protect you, because we, whoever that is, won't.
Very interesting. One question. If droplets are the problem, why are they not taking saliva samples? Why are they using deep swabs?
Oh, wait, you're being rational. I'm sorry. No, no, no. We're talking about the government. We're talking about COVID. We're talking about the CDC, the Keystone Cops of public health. No, no, no. You're asking for rational behavior, and we don't have that available to us in the people who are supposedly in charge. In case you haven't noticed, the CDC has changed its testing regulations and suggested guidelines twice in the last 7 days. They've
Right.
also changed whether the COVID virus is transmitted by aerosol or by droplet. Or no, no, it's aerosol. Or wait, no, it's droplet. No, it's not aerosol. Oh, they keep really?
Right.
You're looking to
Well,
them for
there's something else
information?
happening here, perhaps. One of our commenters, viruses are a part of the body's immune system. Germ theory is a fallacy
Absolutely.
to foist vaccines on the sheeple. Yeah.
Everything we think we know about viruses, heresy coming up, everything we think we know about viruses needs to be re-examined. Everything we think we know about bacteria and the germ theory of disease needs to be re-examined.
One commenter thinks of it.
Everything we know about antibodies being protective when they're produced in response to a vaccine doesn't need to be re-examined. It's completely wrong.
All right. I heard silk masks do work, says one person.
Oh, well, I heard that painting yourself blue and sticking chicken feathers on
All
your head
right.
will work too.
This is all right. Okay. The incubation cycle is 7 to 9 days. If masks work, it would take no more than 2 weeks to beat the virus. Interesting.
If masks work for certain things. Let us say, for example, that you want to have the bottom half of your face absolutely dead white. A mask will work for that. No. There
All
are
right.
things that masks work for, just not the controlling the transmission of viral diseases.
Right. Other people are commenting that New Yorkers have been masked since March and daily cases are still being registered. True, true. That's a good point. All right. Other people are telling us that strong immune systems and they haven't had the flu for decades. Yes, but we can't talk about treating disease. All right. If droplets are a problem, why do they not take saliva samples?
Let me add a footnote. In 1994, the Dietary Supplements Health and Education Act was passed, and it gave us the right to take any dosage of any nutrient or herb or vitamin that we wanted because they are foods. They are part of the food supply. Yay. But it also took away the right to use any disease name in close approximation to any of those items. It also took away the right to use the words treat, prevent, mitigate, cure, or diagnose with any of those products. And therefore, although the First Amendment is a great idea, we don't have it. And you'll hear more about that. Stay tuned to opensourcetruth.com and the Dr. Rima newsletter. I hope you're all signed up for it in coming days, and you will hear one hell of a lot more about that. We can't talk about it quite yet, but oh boy, you're going to
It's
hear
all
about
coming
it.
to fruition. Dr.
You
Goodman
bet.
says, but slowing the spread of the virus cannot save lives unless it slows it so much as to cause the numbers to go down fairly quickly. And these measures aren't strong enough to do that.
Well, let's talk about the fact that the numbers are very much akin to what comes out of the rear end of a bull. They don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. First of all, most of them are guesses. Well, I guess she had COVID. I mean, she had trouble breathing, right? Never mind the emphysema, never mind the cardiovascular disease and the COPD, and the fact that she was a smoker for 34 years. Must be COVID. Okay, it's COVID. That's how most of the numbers were acquired. And then they used tests that are completely inaccurate with false positives and false negatives, and even testing things that don't have anything to do with viral disease. Okay,
Right.
so the whole testing thing, the whole numbers thing is absolute horsepucky.
Right. Another commenter says that they're using the masks, the way they're using the masks violates OSHA laws. And yes, yes, commenter,
No.
that's
No.
very
No,
important.
that's not
There's an
true.
article in Open Source Truth
It's not.
that
It's not
talks
true.
about what OSHA says about masks.
It's not true, and here's why it's not
Tell
true.
us.
Masks are not covered by OSHA. The N95 quote mask is legally a respirator. Respirators are covered by OSHA.
Okay.
Any kind of respirator, any kind of rebreathing valve device, and an N95 is a rebreathing valve device, is a respirator, and that is covered by OSHA. Any kind of mask, I put a Kleenex over my face, I put a dish towel over my face, I put a whatever over my face, that's a mask, and that is not covered by OSHA.
Right. Exactly. All right. Okay, let's take a look at a few other folks as we reach the end of our program. We really are very happy that you all stuck with us for over an hour now. That's
How many?
really nice.
How many of you out there are there?
There are 50 people listening right now.
Ooh, yay!
There were a few more at the midpoint. And of course, many more, hundreds if not thousands, will be seeing it for as long as it may be on YouTube. Let's see.
You'll have a link.
How do we order the gold card and
wait.
the silver card? That was the question. Go to this tiny URL, mask exemption. You can order both cards at that site. All right.
By the way, for the remainder of the month of September, we will cover the shipping and handling, and they're at both cards are at a very special reduced price. The price will go up on October 1st, and we will no longer cover shipping and handling. So it's a good time to get them. But